Commander Lydia Steele moved across the gleaming deck of the aircraft carrier USS Horizon like a storm front gathering power. At 42, she had perfected the art of commanding a room without raising her voice, a talent that had served her exceptionally well as she rose through the ranks of Naval Intelligence to positions few women had ever reached. Her uniform was impeccably pressed, her blonde hair cut in a practical bob that needed minimal maintenance at sea, but there was something in her eyes, a penetrating intelligence that made seasoned officers straighten their posture when she walked by. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The massive vessel cut through the waters of the North Atlantic with purpose, its mission classified at levels that excluded most of the 5,000 personnel aboard. Even Captain Reynolds, the ship's commanding officer, knew only that they were to rendezvous with an unmarked vessel at specific coordinates and receive a package before continuing to their scheduled naval exercises. It was unusual, but not unprecedented. The Navy sometimes transported sensitive cargo or personnel under cover of routine operations. What made this mission different was Commander Steele. She had arrived via helicopter just hours before departure, carrying credentials that granted her access to areas of the ship that even the captain needed special clearance to enter. The crew had quickly labeled her the Ghost, present but untouchable, observing everything while revealing nothing. None of them knew that Commander Lydia Steele existed only on paper. Her service record showed a distinguished career in naval intelligence with commendations that couldn't be discussed, and deployments to regions the Navy officially never visited. These records were masterpieces of deception, created by the same clandestine division that had systematically erased every trace of her actual identity 15 years ago. Her real name, her original service record, her extraordinary accomplishments, all had been purged from every database, every personnel file, every official document with a thoroughness that would have been frightening had she not requested it herself. The anonymity was necessary for the work she did, operations so sensitive that even acknowledging their existence would compromise national security. Each morning since coming aboard the Horizon, Lydia had established the same routine. She would rise before dawn, complete a punishing workout in the ship's gym when few others were present, then make her way to the secure communications room where she would spend exactly 47 minutes reviewing encrypted transmissions. Afterward, she would walk the entirety of the massive vessel, observing the crew at their duties with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. The sailors respected her space, intimidated by both her rank and her demeanor. Junior officers speculated about her purpose aboard ship, while senior officers avoided questions altogether. They had learned that curiosity about Commander Steele led nowhere productive. "The package arrives tomorrow," she informed Captain Reynolds during their daily briefing, her voice carrying the clipped precision of someone who measured every word. "I'll need a team of your most discreet personnel to assist with the transfer." Reynolds nodded, suppressing his frustration at being kept in the dark on his own ship. "Of course, Commander. May I ask what exactly we're receiving?" Lydia studied him with those remarkable eyes, gray like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "It's better if you don't know, Captain. Plausible deniability protects both of us." What Reynolds couldn't know was that Lydia carried with her at all times a small titanium card, etched with a distinctive hexagonal pattern and an alphanumeric sequence that, if scanned by the right systems, would trigger alerts at the highest levels of naval command and national security. A clearance designation so classified that most admirals weren't aware it existed. The officers' mess had begun to quiet when she entered each evening. Conversations would falter, then resume at a lower volume as she collected her meal and sat alone at the same table in the corner. Some officers made awkward attempts at small talk, which she acknowledged with professional courtesy but little encouragement. A few of the bolder ones had tried to draw her out with questions about her background or the nature of her assignment. Their efforts earned them nothing but polite deflection. Captain Reynolds had taken to calling her our resident phantom when he thought she couldn't hear. The nickname spread quickly among the senior staff, who found something unnerving about a woman who could move through a crowded ship with such deliberate purpose yet leave so little impression of herself behind. What mattered to Lydia was the mission, ensuring the safe transfer of the package, completing her assignment with the same meticulous attention to detail that had become her signature. But today would be different. Today events would unfold that would shatter the carefully constructed walls between her present role and her classified past. The morning dawned with rough seas that set the massive carrier pitching in ways that even experienced sailors found challenging. Waves crashed against the hull as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising weather that would make the scheduled rendezvous more difficult. In the Combat Information Center, officers monitored radar screens with increasing concern as the storm front approached their position. Commander Steele arrived precisely on schedule, her stride steady, despite the ship's movement. She surveyed the tense atmosphere with a single sweeping glance before approaching the operations officer. "Lieutenant Commander Morris, status report on our rendezvous vessel," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the CIC. Morris gestured to his radar screen where a small blip moved steadily toward their position. "On schedule, Commander, despite the weather. ETA 53 minutes. But we've also detected another vessel here." He pointed to a second blip moving on an intercept course, not broadcasting identification and not responding to hails. Lydia studied the screen, her expression revealing nothing. "What's the assessment?" "Could be nothing. Fishing vessel with damaged communications. Could be something else." Morris hesitated. "Captain Reynolds has ordered us to change course as a precaution and delay the rendezvous until we can identify the vessel." This was precisely what Lydia had been trained to anticipate: the unexpected variable, the potential compromise, the moment when plans needed to adapt. "The rendezvous proceeds as scheduled," she stated flatly. "Inform Captain Reynolds immediately." Morris stared at her. "Ma'am, the captain gave direct orders, which are now superseded. The rendezvous cannot be delayed. Not for weather. Not for unidentified vessels. Not for anything short of direct attack." "Those are my orders, Lieutenant Commander." The tension in the CIC ratcheted up several notches as officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Morris straightened his posture, squaring his shoulders. "With all due respect, Commander, this is Captain Reynolds' ship. I can't countermand his orders without—" "You're not countermanding anything, Lieutenant Commander." "I am." Lydia's voice remained level, but something in her tone made Morris take an involuntary step back. "Contact the captain. Now." As Morris reached for the communication console, the ship's executive officer, Commander Reeves, entered the CIC. He assessed the situation with the quick perception of a career officer who had witnessed his share of command conflicts. "Is there a problem?" he asked, moving to stand beside Morris. "Commander Steele is ordering us to maintain course for the rendezvous, despite Captain Reynolds' instructions to delay," Morris explained, his discomfort evident. Reeves turned to Lydia, his expression carefully neutral. "Commander, I understand your mission has priority, but in matters of ship safety, the captain's authority is absolute. Naval regulations are quite clear on this point." "I'm familiar with the regulations, Commander Reeves," Lydia replied. "And I'm also familiar with the protocols governing my mission. The rendezvous proceeds as scheduled. If Captain Reynolds wishes to discuss this further, I'll be happy to do so, but my orders stand." The confrontation might have escalated further if Captain Reynolds himself hadn't chosen that moment to enter the CIC. At 55, Reynolds carried himself with the confidence of a man who had spent 3 decades mastering his profession. His salt and pepper hair and weathered face gave him a distinguished appearance that matched his reputation as one of the most respected carrier captains in the fleet. "Commander Steele," he acknowledged, his tone cool but professional. "I understand you have concerns about our change, of course." "Not concerns, Captain. Instructions." "The rendezvous proceeds as scheduled regardless of the unidentified vessel or weather conditions." Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. "My responsibility is the safety of this ship and its crew. Until we identify that vessel and assess its intentions, we maintain our current heading." "Your responsibility also includes following the chain of command, Captain," Lydia said evenly. "And in this specific matter, your orders have been superseded." A tense silence fell over the CIC as officers tried to appear busy while straining to hear every word of the exchange. Reynolds studied Lydia with the careful assessment of a man measuring an unexpected challenge. "Commander Steele, step into the tactical planning room with me, now." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Once the door closed behind them, Reynolds turned to face her, his patience visibly thinning. "I've accommodated your presence on my ship, Commander. I've respected your need for operational security. But I will not allow you to undermine my authority with my crew. Whatever your mission is, it doesn't give you the right to countermand my orders regarding the safety of this vessel." Lydia met his gaze without flinching. Captain Reynolds, I understand your position, but the rendezvous cannot be delayed. The package we're receiving is time-sensitive in ways I'm not at liberty to discuss. Any deviation from the schedule could compromise national security at the highest levels. That's not good enough, Reynolds replied, his voice hardening. I need more than vague allusions to national security. This is my ship, and unless you can provide me with a direct order from Fleet Command or explain exactly why this mysterious package justifies putting my crew at risk, we maintain our current course. It was the moment Lydia had hoped to avoid, but she had prepared for it nonetheless. Without a word, she reached into an interior pocket of her uniform jacket and withdrew a small titanium card. She didn't hand it to Reynolds. Instead, she placed it on the tactical display table where the embedded scanner could read the hexagonal pattern and alphanumeric code etched into its surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ship's secure systems recognized the authentication code, and the tactical display suddenly flashed a series of alerts and protocols that Captain Reynolds had never seen in his 30 years of service. The screen displayed a single message in bold red letters: "Ultraviolet clearance confirmed. All naval personnel to comply with bearer's instructions immediately. Authorization Admiral Ellsworth, Joint Chiefs." Reynolds stared at the display, the coffee mug in his hand tilting dangerously as his grip slackened in shock. "Ultraviolet?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. "That's not possible. Ultraviolet is theoretical, a classification level discussed in War College as a hypothetical scenario." A trickle of hot coffee spilled over the rim of his mug, splattering onto the deck as Reynolds continued to stare at the authentication code. With remarkable reflexes, he caught himself before dropping the mug entirely, setting it on the table with a hand that trembled slightly. "It's very real, Captain," Lydia said quietly, "as is the importance of this rendezvous. I understand your concerns about the unidentified vessel. I share them. But the rendezvous must proceed exactly as scheduled." Reynolds looked at her with new eyes, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the woman standing before him. "Who are you? Really?" "For the purposes of this mission, I am Commander Lydia Steele, Naval Intelligence. That's all you need to know and all you want to know, Captain. Believe me when I say that knowledge beyond that becomes a burden few officers can carry without it affecting their careers." The tactical room fell silent as Reynolds processed this information, his training and experience wrestling with the unprecedented situation before him. Finally, he straightened his posture, his face settling into the impassive mask of a career officer following orders he might not understand but would execute to the letter. "Very well, Commander. The rendezvous proceeds as scheduled. What do you need from my crew?" "A security detail of 6 personnel with level 4 clearance or higher. Marine detachment preferred. No recording devices, no communications equipment beyond what I personally authorize. And I need control of Hangar Bay 3 with all non-essential personnel cleared from the area before the package arrives." Reynolds nodded, the shock in his eyes giving way to professional focus. "Consider it done. And the unidentified vessel? We monitor it closely. If it approaches within 5 nautical miles of our position during the transfer, you have my authorization to take whatever measures you deem necessary to protect this ship." "Understood." Reynolds hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming since he saw the ultraviolet designation. "Commander, is this package? Is it what I think it is?" Lydia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Captain, I can neither confirm nor deny the nature of the package. I can only tell you that its safe delivery is crucial to operations that extend far beyond this ship or even this fleet. You're doing your country a service today that will never appear in any record but matters more than most missions you'll ever undertake." Reynolds absorbed this, then reached for the titanium card still resting on the tactical display. Lydia stopped him with a slight gesture. "Don't touch it, Captain. The biometric sensors are keyed exclusively to me. Anyone else attempting to handle it triggers security protocols that would be unpleasant for everyone involved." With a nod of understanding, Reynolds watched as Lydia retrieved the card and returned it to the hidden pocket in her uniform. Together, they exited the tactical planning room and returned to the CIC, where the crew waited in tense anticipation. "Resume original course," Reynolds announced with authority that silenced any questions before they could be asked. proceed with the scheduled rendezvous. Commander Reeves, assemble a Marine security detail to meet with Commander Steele immediately. Lieutenant Commander Morris, continue monitoring that unidentified vessel and report any change in its course or speed directly to me. The CIC burst into activity as officers relayed the new orders throughout the massive ship. Lydia stood slightly apart, observing the efficiency with which Reynolds' crew executed their tasks. She had assessed him correctly. Once convinced of the mission's importance, he would bring his considerable skills to bear, ensuring its success. As Lydia departed the CIC to prepare for the rendezvous, she caught snippets of whispered conversations among the junior officers. The word ultraviolet had somehow leaked from the tactical room, and the rumor mill was already generating fantastic theories about what could possibly warrant such an unprecedented classification level. Let them speculate, she thought. The truth was far stranger than anything they could imagine. In the officers' mess, Lieutenant Jessica Winters was finishing her coffee when she overheard two communications officers discussing the confrontation in the CIC. Reynolds actually backed down. One whispered incredulously, "In 30 years, I've never seen him countermanded on his own ship." "Whatever credentials she's carrying must be extraordinary," the other replied. "Matheson in comm says the secure systems went crazy when she presented some kind of authentication code." Winters listened with growing interest. Since Commander Steele had come aboard, Winters had found herself inexplicably drawn to the mysterious officer. There was something about Steele that reminded her of stories her father, a retired admiral, used to tell about a shadowy division within Naval Intelligence that operated beyond conventional command structures. Units that technically didn't exist, carrying out missions that would never appear in any official record. As a junior intelligence officer herself, Winters had always dismissed these stories as the exaggerated tales of an old sailor. Now she wasn't so sure. Her thoughts were interrupted when the ship's general announcement system crackled to life. All personnel not directly involved in flight operations or the scheduled transfer are to remain at their duty stations until further notice. Hangar Bay 3 is now restricted to authorized personnel only. Winters checked her watch. The rendezvous was scheduled for 30 minutes from now. Whatever package they were receiving, it had just become the most intriguing mystery on the ship. In Hangar Bay 3, Lydia stood with the Marine security detail as final preparations were made for the transfer. The massive space had been cleared of all aircraft and non-essential equipment, leaving an eerie emptiness that amplified every sound. The 6 Marines selected for the detail stood at parade rest, their expressions professionally blank, despite the unusual nature of their assignment. Captain Reynolds entered the hangar bay, his presence immediately commanding attention. He crossed to where Lydia stood, reviewing final security protocols on a tablet. "The unidentified vessel has changed course," he informed her. "It's now heading away from our position at high speed. Whatever it was, it's no longer a concern for this operation." Lydia nodded, unsurprised. "Thank you, Captain. The transport vessel will be alongside in approximately 12 minutes. Once docking is complete, only myself and the security detail will approach. No one else enters the hangar bay until I personally give clearance." "Understood." Reynolds hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Commander, in my 30 years of service, I've never encountered ultraviolet clearance. I wasn't even certain it actually existed outside of theoretical discussions. Whatever we're receiving today, should I be concerned?" Lydia considered her response carefully. "Captain, the less you know about today's transfer, the better for your career and possibly your life expectancy. But I can assure you that what we're doing serves the highest interests of national security. Your role in this will be remembered, even if it can never be acknowledged." Reynolds nodded, accepting the non-answer with the resignation of a career officer who understood that some operations existed in the shadows by necessity. "The ship is at your disposal, Commander. Whatever you need." As Reynolds departed, Lydia turned her attention to the massive hangar bay doors that were now opening to the turbulent sea beyond. The storm had intensified, with waves crashing against the carrier's hull and wind howling through the opening. Despite the challenging conditions, a sleek, unmarked vessel was maneuvering alongside with remarkable precision. The Marines tensed, almost imperceptibly as the transfer began. their training overriding their natural curiosity about what could possibly warrant such extraordinary security measures. Lydia stepped forward as a sealed container was moved from the transport vessel into the hangar bay, her focus absolute as she verified the integrity seals and security codes. What happened next would change everything aboard the USS Horizon, and perhaps the course of international relations, in ways that none of them could possibly imagine. The sealed container from the transport vessel gleamed under the harsh lights of Hangar Bay 3, its polished surface emblazoned with security markings that few aboard the USS Horizon had ever encountered. Lieutenant Jessica Winters watched from her concealed position near the maintenance access corridor, her curiosity overwhelming her sense of protocol. She had manufactured a reason to be near the hangar bay, claiming to need access to communications equipment stored in an adjacent compartment. Now hidden from view, she observed as Commander Steele approached the container with methodical precision. The Marines formed a protective perimeter, their weapons at the ready despite being aboard their own ship. The tension in their postures told Winters that they had been briefed on the sensitivity of this operation and the potential threat it might attract. But threat from whom? They were in international waters, surrounded by the most advanced naval strike group in history. What could possibly represent a danger in this controlled environment? Her answer came moments later when Commander Steele placed her palm against the container's biometric scanner. The sealed unit hissed as pressure equalized, and the top section retracted to reveal not weapons or intelligence materials as Winters had expected, but a human figure. A woman, perhaps in her early 30s, emerged from the container with the careful movements of someone recovering from extended confinement. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit with no insignia or identifying marks, but carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of military training. Her auburn hair was cut short in a practical style, and her eyes, even from this distance, held an alertness that suggested constant vigilance. Asset secure, Commander Steele announced to the Marine detail. Initiate Phase 2 protocols. The Marines responded with synchronized efficiency, reforming their perimeter to include the newcomer. One of them handed the woman a small duffel bag, which she accepted with a brief nod of acknowledgement. Winters shifted slightly to maintain her view, inadvertently brushing against a tool rack. The metallic clatter seemed to echo through the cavernous hangar bay, and 6 Marines instantly raised their weapons in her direction. "We have a breach," announced the Marine sergeant, his voice calm despite the sudden escalation. "Northwest maintenance access. Single intruder." Commander Steele's reaction was immediate and decisive. "Secure the observer. Full containment protocols." Before Winters could retreat or explain her presence, 2 Marines had flanked her position, their weapons trained with unwavering precision. "Exit the maintenance corridor with your hands visible," one ordered, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Winters stepped forward, hands raised to shoulder height. "Lieutenant Jessica Winters, Intelligence Division. I was accessing communications equipment in compartment 37B when I—" "Save it, Lieutenant," Commander Steele interrupted, approaching with measured steps. "Your presence in this restricted area during a classified operation constitutes a serious security breach." The woman who had emerged from the container studied Winters with penetrating intensity, her gaze analytical rather than hostile. She exchanged a brief glance with Commander Steele, a look that seemed to communicate volumes without a single word spoken. "Take her to secure holding room 4, Steele ordered. "Full isolation, no communications access, no visitors without my direct authorization." As the Marines escorted Winters from the hangar bay, she caught a final glimpse of the mysterious woman, now engaged in quiet conversation with Commander Steele. Though she couldn't hear their words, the body language between them suggested a relationship beyond professional association, a familiarity born of shared experiences. In secure holding room 4, Winters paced the small space with growing anxiety. The room contained nothing but a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs, a space designed for interrogation rather than comfort. Hours passed with no contact, no explanation, and no indication of what consequences she might face for her unauthorized observation. When the door finally opened, she expected Commander Steele or perhaps Captain Reynolds. Instead, Admiral James Donovan entered the room, his 4-star insignia glinting under the harsh lighting. At 62, Donovan was a legend in naval circles. A tactician whose strategies had shaped modern maritime operations and whose influence extended to the highest levels of military and political power. Winters snapped to attention, her training overriding her confusion. "Admiral, sir!" Donovan waved her back to ease with a casual gesture that belied the gravity of his expression. "At ease, Lieutenant. Have a seat." As they both settled into the uncomfortable metal chairs, Donovan studied her with the calculated assessment of a man who had spent decades evaluating the character and potential of naval personnel. "You've created quite a situation for yourself, Lieutenant Winters," he began, his voice carrying the gravitas of command without raising in volume. "Observing a classified operation without authorization, compromising a security protocol that exists at the highest levels of national security. These are not minor infractions. Admiral, I can explain." "Can you?" Donovan interrupted, his tone curious rather than confrontational. "Because I'd be very interested to hear what explanation could possibly justify deliberately positioning yourself to observe an operation classified beyond your clearance level." Winters hesitated, knowing that her career likely hung in the balance. The truth seemed her only viable option. "Professional curiosity, sir. Since Commander Steele came aboard, there have been inconsistencies in her operational patterns that raised questions. As an intelligence officer, I was trained to notice anomalies and investigate them." "Investigate," Donovan repeated, testing the word. "Without authorization. Without orders. On your own initiative." "Yes, sir," Winters admitted. "It was a lapse in judgment." Donovan leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Tell me what you saw in Hangar Bay 3, Lieutenant." "Every detail." Winters recounted her observations precisely. The container, the woman who emerged from it, the exchange between her and Commander Steele, the security protocols initiated afterward. Throughout her report, Donovan listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he remained silent for a long moment. "Your observational skills are impressive," he finally said. "Most people under stress miss half of what's happening around them. You caught details that matter." Before Winters could respond, the door opened again, and Commander Steele entered along with the woman from the container. Up close, Winters could see that the newcomer's jumpsuit was actually made of a material she didn't recognize, something that appeared like simple fabric but moved with a fluidity that suggested advanced technology beneath the surface. "Admiral," Steele acknowledged with a nod that somehow conveyed both respect and equality. "She's been fully briefed on the situation." Donovan turned to the mysterious woman. "Your assessment?" The woman studied Winters with analytical precision. When she spoke, her voice carried a subtle accent that Winters couldn't quite place, something Eastern European perhaps, but meticulously disguised through training. "She's sharp. Noticed details most would miss. Acted on initiative rather than orders, which is either a liability or an asset depending on how it's channeled." The woman moved closer, her presence commanding attention despite her understated appearance. "The question isn't whether she's capable, it's whether she can be trusted with what she's seen." Admiral Donovan nodded thoughtfully. "Lieutenant Winters, you're facing a decision point in your career. What happens in the next few minutes will determine not just your future in naval intelligence, but potentially your entire life path. Before we proceed, I need to know one thing. Why did you join Naval Intelligence?" The question caught Winters off guard. She had expected recriminations, not philosophical inquiry. "To serve my country, sir. To protect American interests and security in an increasingly complex global environment." A textbook answer, the unknown woman observed. But not necessarily an honest one. Winters felt a flash of indignation. "With respect, you don't know me or my motivations." "Then enlighten us," Commander Steele suggested, her tone neutral but her eyes intensely focused. "Why Naval Intelligence specifically? Why not become a line officer? Why not serve in any of the dozen other capacities available to someone with your qualifications?" Winters considered her response carefully, sensing that this was no ordinary interrogation. "Because I believe that information, how it's gathered, analyzed, and applied, is the most powerful tool in modern warfare. Because I wanted to be part of the system that sees beyond the obvious and identifies threats before they materialize. Because," she hesitated, then committed to complete honesty, "because I grew up hearing my father's stories about operations that changed history, but never made the history books." I wanted to make that kind of difference." A brief silence followed her answer. Admiral Donovan exchanged meaningful glances with both women before making a decision that would alter the course of multiple lives. "Lieutenant Winters, what I'm about to tell you is classified at a level called ultraviolet. Until today, you weren't aware this classification existed. After today, you will never speak of it to anyone who hasn't been specifically cleared to discuss it with you. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Winters replied, her curiosity now tempered with apprehension. "Commander Steele isn't Naval Intelligence, at least not in the way you understand the term. She's part of a program called Penumbra, a joint initiative that operates outside conventional command structures to address threats that conventional forces cannot." The unknown woman stepped forward. "My name is Dr. Eliza Weaver. Until 72 hours ago, I was embedded as a research scientist at the Volkov Institute in Russia, gathering intelligence on a weapons system that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in Europe. My extraction was conducted under Penumbra protocols when my cover was compromised." Winters struggled to process this information. "You're a deep cover agent? But why bring you to an aircraft carrier? Why not extract you directly to a secure facility on land?" "Because what Dr. Weaver discovered cannot wait for conventional transport," Commander Steele explained. "The intelligence she gathered needs to be analyzed and acted upon immediately. This carrier group is currently positioned to respond if the situation requires military intervention." Admiral Donovan leaned forward. "Lieutenant, the reason Commander Steele carries ultraviolet clearance is because Penumbra operatives need the authority to commandeer any military asset at their discretion. When national security at the highest level is at stake, bureaucratic channels become a luxury we cannot afford." The implications were staggering. An intelligence unit with the authority to override admirals and potentially redirect entire carrier groups based on their own assessment of threats. It defied everything Winters had been taught about military chain of command and oversight. "Sir, with respect, that level of autonomous authority seems dangerous?" Dr. Weaver suggested. "Potentially susceptible to abuse? Open to catastrophic error if the wrong assessment is made?" She smiled thinly. "These are precisely the concerns that led to the creation of ultraviolet clearance in the first place. It's not granted lightly, Lieutenant. The screening process eliminates 99.7% of candidates." Commander Steele's expression softened slightly. "Ultraviolet isn't about power, Lieutenant Winters. It's about responsibility. The burden of making decisions that affect millions of lives without the luxury of committee reviews or congressional oversight. It's a weight that breaks most people who carry it." Quote, Admiral Donovan stood, signaling a shift in the conversation. "Lieutenant, you're being offered a choice. Your unauthorized observation of a Penumbra operation makes you a security risk. The standard protocol would be to remove you from active duty, revoke your clearances, and ensure you're placed in a position where you have no access to sensitive information for the remainder of your career." Winters felt her stomach tighten. Everything she had worked for, destroyed in a moment of misguided curiosity. "However," Donovan continued, "Commander Steele has made an alternative recommendation. She believes your observational skills, initiative, and background make you a potential candidate for Penumbra assessment." The room seemed to still as Winters absorbed the implications. "You're recruiting me because I broke protocol?" Dr. Weaver laughed softly. "Not because you broke protocol, Lieutenant. Because of how and why you broke it. Penumbra doesn't need officers who blindly follow rules. We need people who can think independently, assess situations without guidance, and act decisively even when the rulebook offers no clear path." "The assessment process is grueling," Commander Steele warned. "Most candidates don't complete it. Of those who do, fewer than 10% are ultimately selected for the program. If you choose this path, you'll disappear from conventional naval service. Your friends and family will be told you've been assigned to a classified research project. Your communications with them will be limited and monitored." "And if I succeed?" Winters asked, her mind racing with possibilities. "You'll become part of something larger than yourself," Admiral Donovan answered. "You'll conduct operations that save thousands of lives but never make headlines. You'll make decisions that shape global events but never receive public recognition. You'll carry clearance that allows you to command resources most admirals can't access, but you'll operate almost entirely without support networks." Dr. Weaver approached Winters directly. "Most importantly, You'll live with the knowledge that your judgment, your assessment of threats and opportunities, directly impacts national security at levels most intelligence officers never glimpse. It's not a career, Lieutenant. It's a life sentence to perpetual responsibility. The gravity of the choice before her was overwhelming. Winters had always aspired to make a difference in naval intelligence, but this went far beyond her most ambitious dreams, or her most sobering nightmares. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now?" Commander Steele replied simply. "Penumbra doesn't operate on conventional timelines. Dr. Weaver's intelligence needs to be acted upon immediately. If you accept assessment, you'll be transferred off this carrier within the hour to begin the process. If you decline, you'll be debriefed, sworn to secrecy about what you've learned, and reassigned to a position commensurate with your reduced clearance level." Admiral Donovan moved toward the door. "I'll give you 5 minutes with Commander Steele to ask any final questions. Choose wisely, Lieutenant. This opportunity, once declined, will never be offered again." He exited the room with Dr. Weaver, leaving Winters alone with the woman who had upended her understanding of naval operations. As the door closed, Commander Steele's posture relaxed subtly. For the first time since coming aboard the Horizon, she seemed less like an untouchable authority figure, and more like a human being carrying extraordinary burdens. "You have questions," Steele said. "Ask them quickly." Winters organized her thoughts, prioritizing what she most needed to know. The confrontation with Captain Reynolds, was that orchestrated? A test to see how he would respond to ultraviolet authority? Steele's lips quirked in what might have been appreciation. Perceptive. Yes and no. The unidentified vessel was real, and Reynolds. Caution was warranted. But I could have handled it differently. I chose to force the issue because I needed to establish absolute operational authority quickly. Time constraints didn't allow for diplomatic negotiations. And my observation of the transfer? Was that part of your plan too? No, Steele admitted. That was entirely your initiative, though not entirely surprising. Your personnel file flagged you as someone with unusual perceptiveness and a tendency to investigate rather than accept situations at face value. Winters absorbed this, then asked the question that troubled her most. If Penumbra operates with this level of autonomy, what prevents abuse? What stops an operative with ultraviolet clearance from using that authority for personal agendas or flawed assessments? Commander Steele studied her with new intensity. "That," she said quietly, "is exactly the question that determines whether someone is suitable for Penumbra. The simple answer is that nothing stops us except ourselves, our training, our judgment, our ethical foundations, which is why the selection process is so brutal. One person with poor judgment and ultraviolet clearance could potentially start a war." "That's not reassuring," Winters observed. "It's not meant to be." Penumbra isn't a reassuring concept. It exists because there are threats so immediate, so potentially catastrophic, that conventional response mechanisms are too slow. Every Penumbra operative lives with the knowledge that their decisions carry weight that would crush most people. We don't seek that burden. We accept it because someone must. Winters considered this, the full implications sending a chill through her. How do you handle it? The responsibility, the isolation, the knowledge that one mistake could have devastating consequences? For the first time, something like genuine emotion crossed Commander Steele's face, a momentary glimpse of the woman beneath the carefully controlled exterior. "Some days better than others," she admitted. "You find anchors, principles that guide your decisions when the variables become overwhelming. You learn to trust your training and your instincts. And you remember why you accepted the burden in the first place." The door opened before Winters could respond. Admiral Donovan returned, his expression grave. "Time's up, Lieutenant. What's your decision?" Winters stood, her mind racing through implications, possibilities, and consequences. Everything she had worked for in her career had led to this moment, a crossroad she hadn't anticipated, but now couldn't ignore. The conventional path offered security, predictability, and a clear progression through the ranks. The path Commander Steele offered was shrouded in uncertainty and weighted with responsibility beyond anything she had imagined. Yet something in Steele's words resonated with her core beliefs about service and purpose. The chance to make a difference not through climbing the conventional ladder of success, but by operating in the shadows where the most critical threats were addressed before they could materialize. "I accept assessment for Penumbra, Admiral," she said, her voice firm despite the turmoil of emotions beneath the surface. Donovan nodded once, neither approving nor disapproving her choice. "Very well. Commander Steele will handle your transfer arrangements. You have 20 minutes to collect essential personal items from your quarters. Nothing else. No communications, no goodbyes, no loose ends." As Admiral Donovan departed, Commander Steele approached Winters with a small device that resembled a medical scanner. "This will temporarily neutralize any tracking implants or devices you might be carrying, knowingly or unknowingly. Standard procedure for all Penumbra transfers." Winters submitted to the scan, still processing the magnitude of the decision she had just made. "Where exactly am I going?" "For now, to a facility where the initial assessment will begin. After that, it depends entirely on your performance." Steele finished the scan and pocketed the device. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I believe you made the right choice. Your skills are wasted in conventional intelligence roles. And if I fail the assessment, then you'll be reassigned as originally planned, with the added burden of knowing what you might have become." Steele's expression was unreadable again, her momentary openness replaced by professional detachment. "But something tells me you won't fail. You have the instincts, the rest can be taught." As they prepared to leave the secure holding room, Winters was struck by a final question. "Commander, if ultraviolet clearance gives you authority over admirals and carrier groups, who do you answer to? Who oversees Penumbra itself?" Commander Steele paused at the threshold, considering her response carefully. "That, Lieutenant Winters, is a question reserved for those who complete the assessment. Some answers come with a price that must be earned." With that cryptic statement hanging between them, they departed for Winters' quarters, the first step in a journey that would transform her understanding of naval intelligence and her place within it forever. The unmarked helicopter lifted from the USS Horizon's flight deck, its rotors slicing through the turbulent air as it banked sharply away from the carrier. Inside, Lieutenant Jessica Winters gripped the edge of her seat, the small duffel containing her hastily gathered personal items secured between her feet. Across from her sat Commander Steele, reviewing information on a specialized tablet that emitted a subtle electronic hum designed to prevent electromagnetic eavesdropping. Dr. Eliza Weaver occupied the seat beside Steele, her attention focused on the darkening horizon. The storm that had threatened the carrier group now enveloped them, rain lashing against the helicopter's windows as lightning illuminated the churning ocean below. Under normal circumstances, such weather would have grounded all non-emergency flights. But Winters was quickly learning that Penumbra operations existed outside the boundaries of normal circumstances. "Where exactly are we going?" she shouted over the roar of the engines. Commander Steele glanced up from her tablet. "First stop is the USS Meridian, a modified Los Angeles-class submarine operating approximately 60 miles northeast of our current position. From there, you'll be transferred to a more secure location for the assessment process." A submarine? Winters hadn't anticipated underwater transport. "Won't that limit our operational mobility?" Dr. Weaver smiled faintly. "Conventional thinking. Surface vessels are relatively easy to track through satellite surveillance. Submarines offer superior stealth capabilities. Especially for personnel transfers, we'd prefer to keep off official channels." The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. "Approaching drop coordinates. Submarine surfacing confirmed. Prepare for deck landing in approximately 3 minutes." Winters peered through the rain-streaked window, searching for signs of the submarine in the turbulent seas below. Through breaks in the cloud cover, she glimpsed a dark shape emerging from the depths, water cascading from its hull as it breached the surface. The Meridian was unlike any Los Angeles-class submarine she had ever studied. Its modified hull featured additional sections that altered its silhouette, and its deck contained specialized equipment that defied immediate identification. This was no standard naval vessel, but something customized for operations well beyond conventional parameters. The helicopter executed a precise landing on the submarine's heaving deck, its skids securing to specialized moorings designed to stabilize the aircraft against the rolling sea. The moment they touched down, a team of figures emerged from a hatch, moving with practiced efficiency despite the storm's fury. "Move quickly," Commander Steele instructed, unbuckling her harness. "The Meridian can only remain surfaced for 7 minutes without compromising operational security." They disembarked into the full force of the storm, rain and sea spray instantly soaking them as they crossed the pitching deck. The submarine crew guided them with firm hands toward the open hatch, their faces obscured by specialized gear that Winters didn't recognize from standard naval equipment catalogs. Descending into the submarine's interior felt like entering another world. The ambient lighting was calibrated to a specific blue-green spectrum that reduced eye strain during extended operations. The air carried the distinctive scent of a closed-system environment, but with subtle differences from the standard atmosphere of naval submarines, some component in the filtration system that Winters couldn't identify. A figure approached them in the narrow corridor, his uniform devoid of identifying insignia or rank indicators. "Commander Steele, Dr. Weaver, Secure Compartment 7 is prepared for your briefing. Captain Montgomery requests your presence in the command center as soon as possible." "Thank you, Executive Officer Carter," Steele replied, confirming that despite the absence of visible rank, the command structure remained intact. "This is Lieutenant Jessica Winters, candidate for Penumbra assessment. She'll need temporary quarters and a security orientation." Carter assessed Winters with clinical precision, neither welcoming nor dismissive. "Of course, we've prepared Compartment 12. I'll handle her orientation personally once you've completed your briefing." As Commander Steele and Dr. Weaver departed with Carter, another crew member approached Winters. "Lieutenant, I'll show you to your quarters. I'm Technical Specialist Rivera, Ship's Intelligence Liaison." Rivera led her through a labyrinth of corridors that seemed to extend far beyond the dimensions of a standard Los Angeles-class submarine. The modifications were more extensive than external appearance had suggested, with specialized compartments and equipment that spoke to capabilities well beyond conventional naval operations. "How long have you been assigned to the Meridian?" Winters asked, attempting to establish rapport. Rivera glanced at her, expression neutral. 3 years, 4 months. You'll find most questions about personnel assignments and vessel specifications are restricted to necessary operational knowledge only. Compartmentalization is standard procedure in Penumbra operations. I'm still trying to understand what Penumbra actually is, Winters admitted. An intelligence unit? A special operations group? Something else entirely? They reached a small compartment that would serve as her temporary quarters. Rivera activated the security panel beside the door, programming it to recognize Winters' biometrics. "Penumbra defies conventional classification," Rivera finally answered. "It's not strictly intelligence, not strictly operations, not strictly analysis. Commander Steele often describes it as the shadow between decision and action, the space where conventional responses prove inadequate, but full military engagement isn't justified or possible." The explanation was both illuminating and frustratingly vague. Before Winters could press further, the submarine's internal communication system activated. "All hands, secure for emergency dive. Repeat, secure for emergency dive. Non-essential personnel to designated secure compartments immediately." Rivera's expression shifted to focused alertness. "Change of plans, follow me to the command center. If we're executing an emergency protocol, you need to be where Commander Steele can make decisions about your status." They moved rapidly through the submarine, crew members securing equipment and sealing compartments with practiced efficiency. Winters felt the distinctive sensation of the vessel descending, the subtle shifts in pressure and the changing sounds of water against the hull confirming their dive. The command center of the USS Meridian bore little resemblance to conventional submarine control rooms. Advanced display systems provided three-dimensional representations of their surrounding environment, while specialized stations monitored parameters that Winters couldn't immediately identify. Captain Montgomery, a weathered officer with calculating eyes, stood at the central command position, reviewing data with focused intensity. Commander Steele and Dr. Weaver were already present, engaged in rapid consultation with the tactical officer. They looked up as Winters and Rivera entered. "Lieutenant." Steele acknowledged, "Circumstances have accelerated our timeline. The Meridian has detected an unidentified vessel tracking our position with active sonar. Captain Montgomery has initiated emergency protocols to evade potential surveillance." "Russian?" Winters asked, her mind immediately categorizing potential threats. "Unknown," Montgomery replied, his voice carrying the measured control of a commander with decades of experience in crisis management. "Acoustic signature doesn't match known Russian, Chinese, or other allied submarine profiles. We're dealing with something unconventional." Dr. Weaver approached one of the specialized monitoring stations, studying the data with intense concentration. The signature analysis indicates advanced propulsion technology, possibly utilizing principles similar to what I observed at Volkov. The implications sent a chill through the command center. If the Russians had developed and deployed the technology Dr. Weaver had risked her life to gather intelligence on, the strategic implications were profound. "Options, Captain?" Commander Steele asked, her tone suggesting that while she could override Montgomery's authority with her ultraviolet clearance, she respected his expertise enough to seek his assessment first. Montgomery gestured to the tactical display. "Standard evasion protocols are unlikely to be effective if they're utilizing Volkov technology. Our best option is to deploy countermeasures and alter course toward the underwater ridge system 30 nautical miles southwest. The geological formations will disrupt their tracking capabilities. Proceed." Steele authorized, then turned to Winters. "Consider this your first practical lesson in penumbra operations, Lieutenant. Sometimes assessment happens in the field rather than in controlled environments." As the Meridian executed its evasion maneuvers, Winters observed the command dynamics with keen interest. Despite the crisis, there was no panic, no raised voices, no wasted motion. Each crew member functioned with extraordinary focus, communications reduced to essential information delivered with precise clarity. Most notably, the traditional naval hierarchy seemed modified within this specialized unit. Captain Montgomery commanded the vessel, but strategic decisions incorporated input from Commander Steele, Dr. Weaver, and key specialists without regard to rank. It was a fluid command structure that prioritized expertise and rapid integration of information over rigid chains of authority. "Countermeasures deployed," announced the tactical officer, altering course to bearing 247, depth 700 feet. "Acoustic dampening systems at maximum capacity." Dr. Weaver frowned at her monitoring station. "They're compensating for our countermeasures. Their tracking algorithms are adaptive. Exactly what I feared from the Volkov research." "Time to underwater ridge?" Commander Steele asked, her focus absolute. 17 minutes at current speed," Montgomery replied. "But we may not have 17 minutes. Their acoustic signature is accelerating. They're pursuing with intent." The tension in the command center intensified, though still contained within the disciplined professionalism of the crew. Winters found herself automatically analyzing the tactical situation, her intelligence training seeking patterns and solutions. "Captain," she said, an idea forming as she studied the environmental data. "The thermocline layer is unusually pronounced in this region due to the storm system. If we execute a rapid ascent to 300 feet, then immediate descent to 900 while deploying additional countermeasures, we could create acoustic confusion that might disrupt their tracking algorithms." All eyes turned to her, some surprised, others evaluating. Captain Montgomery studied the environmental data with narrowed eyes, then glanced at Commander Steele, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval. "Tactical, prepare for acoustic deception maneuver," Montgomery ordered. "Helm, plot course for rapid ascent to 300 feet on my mark, followed by immediate descent to 900. Engineering, prepare to deploy all remaining countermeasures during the descent phase." The crew responded with immediate action, preparations completed with remarkable speed. Winters felt a strange mixture of tension and exhilaration as her suggestion was implemented. The responsibility of having her analysis directly impact a critical operation. "Execute," Montgomery commanded. The Meridian surged upward, its powerful drive systems propelling it toward the thermocline layer. Winters gripped a nearby console as the deck tilted beneath her feet, the submarine's ascent angle pushing the boundaries of its operational parameters. "Approaching 300 feet, reported the helm officer. "Preparing for descent phase. Deploy countermeasures and execute descent," Montgomery ordered. The submarine pivoted with astonishing agility for a vessel of its size, engines reversing thrust as it began a controlled plunge toward deeper waters. Specialized devices ejected from external ports, creating a complex pattern of acoustic signatures designed to confuse pursuing sensors. "Status of pursuing vessel?" Steele demanded. The tactical officer studied his displays intently. "Acoustic signature shows erratic course corrections. They appear to be losing tracking cohesion. The deception is working." Relief was evident in subtle ways. A slight relaxation of shoulders, the exchange of measured glances between crew members. But no one celebrated prematurely. Discipline remained absolute as the Meridian continued its descent toward the underwater ridge system that would provide additional concealment. "Well done, Lieutenant," Commander Steele said quietly to Winters. "Quick analysis. Innovative solution. You're already demonstrating qualities we look for in penumbra candidates." "I simply applied standard tactical principles to the unique environmental conditions," Winters replied, uncomfortable with praise for what seemed like obvious analysis. Dr. Weaver joined them, her expression thoughtful. "That's precisely the point. You integrated multiple data streams, vessel capabilities, environmental factors, enemy technology parameters, and synthesized a solution under pressure. Most intelligence officers would have observed without offering tactical input outside their designated specialty." Captain Montgomery approached, his weathered features revealing cautious optimism. "We've reached the ridge system. Acoustic signature of the pursuing vessel has faded. They've either lost our position completely or abandoned the pursuit. Either way, we've created an operational window. We need to accelerate the timeline," Commander Steele decided. "If Volkov technology is already deployed, our original transfer plan is compromised. Lieutenant Winters will need to begin assessment immediately rather than waiting for arrival at the mainland facility." Montgomery nodded in agreement. "I'll prepare the ship for extended submerged operations. We can convert the auxiliary research compartment for assessment protocols." As the immediate crisis subsided, the command center returned to standard operational procedures. Commander Steele gestured for Winters to accompany her to a small adjacent compartment that served as a secure briefing room. Once the door sealed behind them, Steele's demeanor shifted subtly, not exactly relaxed, but less rigidly controlled. "You performed well during a genuine crisis, Lieutenant. That counts significantly in your assessment process." "I still don't understand what exactly you're assessing me for," Winters admitted. "The capabilities I've witnessed aboard this vessel, the authority structure, the technology, it all suggests something far beyond conventional naval intelligence operations." Steele considered her response carefully. Penumbra was created to address a specific category of threats, those that exist in the gray space between diplomacy and open warfare. When diplomatic channels are too slow or compromised, when conventional military response would escalate beyond acceptable parameters, when intelligence alone is insufficient but action is imperative, that's where we operate. With ultraviolet clearance, Winters added, which apparently grants authority to override admirals. "Authority comes with responsibility," Steele replied, a shadow crossing her features. "Ultraviolet clearance isn't about power, Lieutenant. It's about removing obstacles to necessary action when seconds count and conventional chains of command would introduce fatal delays." The door opened to admit Dr. Weaver, her expression grave. "Analysis confirms it. The acoustic signature matches theoretical projections for Volkov propulsion systems. They've weaponized the research." Commander Steele absorbed this information with the calm of someone accustomed to processing catastrophic intelligence. "Timeline? If they've deployed operational vessels with this technology, they're at least 8 months ahead of our intelligence estimates. The strategic implications are significant, particularly for carrier group vulnerability." Winters listened with growing concern. Her naval intelligence background included briefings on emerging threats to carrier groups, the backbone of American naval power projection. If Russia had developed technology that could reliably track and potentially threaten these assets, the balance of power in critical regions could shift dramatically. "Lieutenant," Commander Steele said, bringing Winters back into the conversation, "this situation exemplifies why Penumbra exists. Conventional response would involve diplomatic protests, acceleration of countermeasure research, possibly redeployment of naval assets, all of which would take weeks or months to implement. We don't have weeks or months if carrier groups are vulnerable now. What's the alternative?" Winters asked, sensing they were approaching the heart of what made Penumbra different and potentially controversial. Dr. Weaver exchanged a significant look with Commander Steele, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "The alternative," Dr. Weaver explained, "is precise, deniable intervention at the source. The Volkov research facility, where I was embedded, is the only location with the complete technical specifications for this technology. Their deployed vessels are operating with prototype systems that require ongoing technical support from the primary research team." The implications were clear, even if unstated. "You're talking about a direct operation against a Russian research facility," Winters said quietly. "That's an act of war if discovered." "Which is why it can't be discovered," Commander Steele replied calmly. "And why such operations require personnel with unique capabilities and the authority to execute without conventional oversight. The risk of a single operation, properly executed, must be weighed against the strategic vulnerability of entire carrier groups over an extended period." The enormity of what they were discussing, what Penumbra apparently routinely undertook, left Winters momentarily speechless. It challenged her understanding of how national security operations functioned, the boundaries between intelligence gathering and direct action, the very framework of international relations. "This is your real assessment, Lieutenant," Commander Steele said, observing her closely. "Not your tactical suggestions during the evasion, not your observational skills, not your technical knowledge. What we need to determine is whether you can process the reality of what Penumbra does and make ethical judgments in situations where there are no clean options, only varying degrees of necessary compromise." Dr. Weaver leaned forward. "Every Penumbra operative faces this moment of recognition, the understanding that sometimes protecting millions requires actions that would be unthinkable under normal ethical frameworks. Some candidates cannot reconcile this reality with their moral compass. There's no shame in that recognition." Winters considered their words carefully, aware that her response would likely determine whether she proceeded further into this shadowy world that existed beyond conventional oversight. "In Naval Intelligence," she finally said, "we're taught that information is power, that knowledge properly applied can prevent conflicts before they begin. But we're also taught that there are lines that shouldn't be crossed, even in the name of national security. And where do you believe those lines exist?" Commander Steele asked, her tone neutral but her gaze intensely focused. "I used to think they were clearly defined," Winters admitted. "Legal boundaries, international agreements, basic human rights principles. But if what you're saying is true, if Russian technology threatens carrier groups that protect millions of lives and maintain strategic stability, then the equation becomes more complex." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "The question isn't whether lines exist, but whether the consequences of not acting outweigh the moral costs of crossing those lines, and whether those who make such decisions do so with full awareness of both the necessity and the weight of the choices they make." Something shifted in Commander Steele's expression, a subtle acknowledgement, perhaps even approval. "Well articulated, Lieutenant. That balance between necessity and moral weight is precisely what Penumbra operatives must constantly evaluate. Not everyone can bear that burden." "How do you?" Winters asked directly. "Bear it, I mean." For the first time, she glimpsed genuine emotion in Steele's carefully controlled demeanor, a momentary window into the human being beneath the commander's exterior. "By remembering why we exist," Steele answered quietly. "By accepting that sometimes the choice isn't between right and wrong, but between necessary wrong and catastrophic wrong. And by ensuring that those who make these impossible decisions are people who feel the weight of them, who never become comfortable with crossing lines, even when necessary." Dr. Weaver nodded in agreement. "The most dangerous person isn't the one who breaks rules reluctantly when necessary. It's the one who stops seeing the rules as meaningful in the first place. Penumbra seeks the former and screens rigorously to exclude the latter." The submarine's communication system interrupted their conversation. "Commander Steele, priority transmission from Admiral Donovan. Authentication code, verified, at ultraviolet level. Route it to secure briefing room 1, Steele responded, then turned to Winters. "Your assessment continues, Lieutenant. Observe, analyze, consider the implications of what you witness. But remember that until you're fully cleared, certain aspects of our operations remain beyond your authorized access." As they moved to the secure communication chamber, Winters found herself at another threshold, granted partial access to operations that officially didn't exist, while still excluded from their innermost workings. It was a carefully calibrated balance between revealing enough to assess her suitability while protecting critical operational security. The secure communication chamber was unlike anything she had encountered in standard naval vessels. Advanced encryption systems and signal processing technology created an environment where even the most sensitive information could be discussed without risk of interception. Admiral Donovan's image appeared on a specialized display screen, his expression grave. "Commander, our worst-case scenario is confirmed. Satellite imagery shows increased activity at 3 additional Volkov research outposts. They're accelerating deployment of the new technology across their northern fleet." "Timeline?" Commander Steele asked, her focus absolute. "Intelligence estimates 14 days until initial operational capability against carrier groups. Dr. Weaver's information is our only advantage, and that window is closing rapidly." Commander Steele absorbed this information with characteristic calm. "Understood. We'll need to execute Operation Blacklight immediately, rather than waiting for optimal conditions. The Meridian can position us for insertion within 72 hours. "Approved," Donovan replied without hesitation. "Ultraviolet clearance confirmed for all necessary resources. The Pentagon will remain officially unaware of your operation until completion." His gaze shifted to Winters, assessing her presence in the secure chamber. "Your new candidate? Showing considerable promise," Steele confirmed. "I'm accelerating her assessment given the compressed timeline." Donovan nodded once. "Your judgment in these matters has proven reliable." "Good luck, Commander. The stakes couldn't be higher." As the transmission ended, Winters processed the implications of what she had witnessed. Operation Blacklight, clearly a direct action against Russian research facilities, authorized at the highest levels yet officially unknown to conventional military command. It represented everything that had been theoretical in their earlier discussion made concrete and immediate. "Questions, Lieutenant?" Commander Steele asked, observing her reaction closely. Winters chose her words carefully. "Operation Blacklight targets the Volkov facilities directly, doesn't it? To neutralize their technology before it can threaten carrier groups." "Precisely. And if successful, no one outside this circle will ever know it happened. The Russians will experience a setback they can't publicly acknowledge without revealing their illegal weapons program, and our naval forces continue operations without ever knowing they were vulnerable." Commander Steele's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested approval of Winters' analysis. "That's the optimal outcome. Reality is often messier, but that's the objective." "And my role in this?" Winters asked, sensing they had reached a critical juncture in her assessment. "That," Commander Steele replied, "depends entirely on your next decision, Lieutenant. You've seen enough now to understand what Penumbra is, what we do, and the ethical complexities involved. You can still choose to step away. We would arrange your reassignment with appropriate security protocols, and you would return to conventional naval intelligence with no official record of what you've witnessed here." The choice hung between them, a final threshold that, once crossed, would irrevocably alter the course of Winters' career and life. The path before her offered purpose and impact beyond anything she had imagined possible in naval intelligence. It also offered moral complexity and burdens that would forever separate her from those who served in more conventional capacities. In that moment, standing in the secure chamber of a submarine that officially didn't exist, preparing for an operation that would never be acknowledged, Lieutenant Jessica Winters made the decision that would define her future and potentially impact the security of millions who would never know her name. "I'm in," Lieutenant Jessica Winters declared, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her decision. "I want to be part of Penumbra." Commander Steele studied her for a long moment, as if searching for any trace of hesitation or uncertainty. Finding none, she gave a single affirmative nod. "Then your assessment continues, not in a training facility, but in the field. Operation Blacklight becomes your proving ground." Over the next 48 hours, the USS Meridian navigated through the frigid depths of the North Atlantic, maintaining stealth protocols that kept them invisible to conventional detection systems. The submarine's modified propulsion systems operated with remarkable efficiency, allowing them to cover distance that would have required significantly more time in standard vessels. During this transit period, Winters underwent intensive briefings on Volkov technology, Russian security protocols, and the specific objectives of Operation Blacklight. The operation's complexity became increasingly apparent. This was no simple sabotage mission, but a precisely calibrated intervention designed to set back Russian technological development without revealing American involvement. "The key is plausible deniability," Dr. Weaver explained during one of their planning sessions. "We're not simply destroying research. We're manipulating it in ways that appear to be internal failures. The Russians need to believe their setbacks stem from their own technical miscalculations, not external interference. Captain Montgomery had converted the submarine's auxiliary research compartment into an operations center, where specialized equipment allowed them to simulate key aspects of the mission. Winters found herself impressed by the thoroughness of their preparation and the integration of intelligence from multiple sources, including Dr. Weaver's first-hand knowledge of the facility. Your role will be intelligence assessment and adaptive planning during the operation, Commander Steele informed her. You'll remain aboard the Meridian, analyzing real-time data from the insertion team and advising on contingencies as they develop. It's a position that requires rapid synthesis of information and decisive judgment, exactly what we're assessing in your candidacy. On the third day, as they approached the designated insertion point off the northern Russian coast, Commander Steele summoned Winters to a secure compartment she hadn't previously accessed. The room contained advanced communication systems and specialized equipment that hummed with barely perceptible energy. "Before we proceed further," Steele said, her tone more formal than usual, "there's a final security protocol. Ultraviolet operations require absolute verification of personnel integrity, not just loyalty, but philosophical alignment with core principles." She activated a specialized scanner that emitted a soft blue light. "This is a neurological assessment tool developed specifically for Penumbra. It doesn't read thoughts. That's still beyond our technology, but it can detect stress responses to specific psychological triggers. In essence, it helps verify that your moral framework is compatible with the ethical complexities of our operations." Winters eyed the device with understandable apprehension. "That sounds dangerously close to a forced psychological evaluation." "It is exactly that," Steele acknowledged without apology. "The difference is that we're not measuring against conventional psychological standards. We're looking for specific cognitive patterns that indicate how you process ethical dilemmas under pressure, whether you can maintain moral awareness while making necessary compromises." The implication was clear. This was a non-negotiable step in her assessment. Winters considered refusing, asserting her rights as a naval officer to decline such invasive procedures, but she also recognized that conventional protections didn't apply in the shadow world she had chosen to enter. "What exactly does it involve?" she asked. "Neither accepting nor rejecting outright. You'll be presented with a series of scenarios through this neural interface," Steele explained, indicating a sleek headset. "Your neurological responses will be measured and analyzed. The process takes approximately 40 minutes and causes no physical discomfort, though some find the psychological intensity challenging." Winters weighed her options. Refusing would likely end her candidacy immediately. Proceeding meant submitting to a level of scrutiny that went beyond anything she had encountered in naval service. Yet wasn't that precisely what she had signed up for when she accepted assessment for Penumbra? A fundamental recalibration of boundaries and protocols? "I'll do it," she decided, reaching for the headset. "One more thing," Commander Steele added. "The assessment isn't just about passing or failing. It's about mutual compatibility. Just as we evaluate your suitability for Penumbra, this process gives you insight into whether Penumbra is truly right for you. Some candidates complete the assessment and voluntarily withdraw because they recognize the misalignment between their core values and what we do. That's not failure. It's wisdom." The neural assessment began with relatively straightforward scenarios: tactical decisions under pressure, ethical trade-offs in intelligence gathering, priority assessments when multiple critical objectives competed for limited resources. As the process continued, however, the scenarios became increasingly complex and morally ambiguous. Winters found herself navigating dilemmas that defied conventional ethical frameworks, situations where all available options carried severe moral costs, where the right choice by standard metrics led to catastrophic consequences, where adherence to established protocols resulted in greater harm than their careful violation. Throughout the assessment, she maintained her core approach, weighing options with clear-eyed pragmatism while never losing sight of the human impact of each decision. She accepted necessary compromises without becoming comfortable with them. She acknowledged moral costs without allowing them to paralyze decisive action when required. When the assessment finally concluded, she removed the headset, feeling mentally exhausted but strangely clarified. The experience had forced her to confront her own ethical boundaries with unprecedented specificity, to understand precisely where her lines were drawn and under what circumstances she would consider crossing them. Commander Steele studied the results on a specialized display, her expression revealing nothing. After several minutes of analysis, she looked up, meeting Winters, gaze directly. "Your results are interesting," she said finally. "Most candidates show clear patterns, either consistent pragmatism or rigid principle. You demonstrate something more nuanced, a flexible ethical framework that adapts to circumstances without abandoning core values. It's rare and precisely what Penumbra requires." Winters felt a complex mixture of emotions, relief, pride, and a sobering awareness of what this assessment truly meant. She had just been deemed psychologically suitable for operations that existed beyond conventional oversight, that sometimes required crossing lines others would consider inviolable. "So I passed?" she asked, needing explicit confirmation. "You passed this phase," Steele clarified. "Final assessment comes with actual field performance. Operation Blacklight will determine whether you truly belong in Penumbra." Their conversation was interrupted by the submarine's communication system. "Commander Steele, we've reached the insertion coordinates. Advance team reports optimal conditions for deployment." "Acknowledged," Steele responded. "Prepare the extraction team for immediate deployment. Lieutenant Winters and I will report to the operations center in 5 minutes." As they made their way through the submarine's corridors, Winters sensed a subtle shift in the crew's energy, the focused intensity that preceded high-risk operations. In the operations center, Dr. Weaver was reviewing final intelligence with the extraction team. 6 individuals whose specialized equipment and focused demeanor marked them as elite operators. "The facility's security protocols follow predictable patterns," Dr. Weaver explained, indicating schematics displayed on the central screen. "Primary research is conducted in the subterranean levels, with most sensitive materials housed in this secured server farm. Physical security includes standard Russian military protocols plus additional measures specific to research facilities." Commander Steele addressed the team with calm authority. "Your objective is precise and limited. Access the server farm, deploy the specialized package as briefed, then extract without detection. This is not a destruction mission. It's a subtle manipulation of research parameters that will appear as internal technical failures over time." The team leader, a compact and tense man identified only as Marshall, nodded in understanding. "Estimated window?" 43 minutes from insertion to extraction," Dr. Weaver replied. "The facility's security systems operate on predictable cycles that create optimal access points at specific intervals." Winters observed the briefing with growing appreciation for Penumbra's operational methodology. This wasn't the brute force approach that sometimes characterized conventional military operations, nor the passive information gathering of traditional intelligence. It was surgical intervention designed to achieve strategic objectives with minimal footprint, changing outcomes without revealing the hand that guided them. "Lieutenant Winters will be your intelligence support for this operation," Commander Steele announced, surprising both Winters and the team. "She'll monitor real-time data feeds and provide adaptive analysis as conditions evolve. Consider her assessments authoritative." The responsibility was unexpected and significant. Winters would be directly supporting an active field operation, with potential international implications. A far cry from the analytical roles typically assigned to officers at her level in conventional naval intelligence. As the team completed final preparations, Commander Steele pulled Winters aside. "This is your real assessment, Lieutenant. Not the neural scan, not the tactical suggestions during our evasion. How you perform under actual operational pressure, how you process information, make judgments, and communicate critical intelligence to field operators that determines whether you belong in Penumbra." "I understand," Winters replied, recognizing the significance of the trust being placed in her. "One more thing," Steele added, her voice dropping to ensure privacy. "There's a secondary objective that hasn't been briefed to the full team. Marshall and his second are aware, but the others aren't cleared for this information." She handed Winters a specialized data drive. "This contains a program designed to access a specific partition of the Volkov research database, information related to something called Project Meridian. If the opportunity presents itself, Marshall will attempt to deploy this package separately from the primary objective." "Project Meridian?" Winters asked, immediately noting the name's connection to their submarine. "A designation of convenience," Steele explained. "The actual project name is Russian and significantly more complex." What matters is that Dr. Weaver discovered references to technology that goes beyond propulsion systems, something potentially more destabilizing to strategic balance. We need confirmation and technical specifications if possible. The complexity of the operation continued to unfold, layers within layers, objectives beyond the stated mission parameters. It reinforced Winter's growing understanding of how Penumbra functioned, operating in the shadows, pursuing multiple strategic objectives simultaneously, compartmentalizing information even within its own specialized teams. As the extraction team departed through the submarine's specialized deployment system, Winters took her position at the Intelligence Coordination Station. Multiple data feeds converged on her displays: satellite imagery, thermal scans, electromagnetic monitoring, and secure communications from the team's advanced equipment. "Communications check," she initiated, adjusting her headset. "All team members, confirm operational status." One by one, the 6 operators confirmed their systems were functioning properly. Their voices carried the calm focus of professionals who had conducted similar high-risk operations numerous times before. "Approaching primary insertion point," Marshall reported. "Environmental conditions nominal. Proceeding with Infiltration Protocol Alpha." Winters monitored their progress through the specialized tracking system, which displayed their positions as they approached the research facility's perimeter. The Russian security measures were substantial: multiple layers of physical barriers, electronic surveillance, and armed personnel. But the team moved with practiced precision, exploiting the gaps Dr. Weaver had identified during her time embedded within the facility. "Security patrol approaching your position," Winters warned, noting movement on the thermal imaging feed. 3 personnel, standard pattern, estimated intersection with your path in 47 seconds. "Acknowledged," Marshall responded. "Implementing holding pattern, Bravo." The team seamlessly adjusted their approach, utilizing concealment techniques that rendered them virtually invisible to conventional observation. The security patrol passed within meters of their position, without any indication of awareness. As the operation progressed, Winters found herself in a state of intense focus, processing multiple information streams simultaneously and translating raw data into actionable intelligence for the field team. The neural assessment had been challenging, but this was the real test: making critical judgments under pressure with lives and mission objectives hanging in the balance. "Approaching server farm access point," Marshall reported approximately 22 minutes into the operation. "Security systems as briefed. Proceeding with primary package deployment." The specialized program they carried was designed to subtly alter research parameters within the Volkov database, introducing nearly imperceptible errors in calculations that would compound over time, eventually leading Russian scientists to fundamental misconceptions about the technology they were developing. It was sabotage of the most sophisticated kind, not destroying information, but subtly corrupting it in ways that would manifest gradually and appear to be internal technical failures. "Primary package successfully deployed," Marshall confirmed several minutes later. "Beginning extraction sequence." "Wait," Winters interjected, studying an anomalous pattern in the facility's network activity. "I'm detecting an unexpected data transfer to the secure server section. Something's being moved from the main research database to a segregated system, possibly in response to security protocols." She analyzed the pattern rapidly, recognizing implications that others might have missed. This could be Project Meridian data being secured. The transfer pattern suggests high-value information being isolated from main systems. Commander Steele moved to her station, studying the data with focused intensity. "Assessment? The secondary objective is at risk," Winters concluded. "If this transfer completes, the targeted information will likely be moved offline entirely, rendering it inaccessible to our current methods." Marshall's voice came through the secure channel. "Options?" Winters made a rapid series of calculations, weighing operational risk against strategic value, time constraints against security exposure. "There's an access point to the segregated system through Junction Box 7 Delta. It's not on our original schematics, but the network architecture reveals its presence. You'd have approximately 94 seconds to deploy the secondary package before automatic security protocols would detect the intrusion." "Confidence level?" Commander Steele asked, her tone neutral but her gaze intense. 87% on access viability," Winters replied without hesitation. 62% on successful deployment before detection. Risk assessment, moderate to high, but with potential strategic value that justifies the exposure. It was a significant judgment call, recommending a deviation from the planned operation based on her analysis of emerging data. If she was wrong, she could compromise not just the secondary objective, but potentially the entire mission and team. Steele considered the assessment for precisely 3 seconds. Proceed with secondary deployment through the identified access point. Contingency extraction protocols authorized if necessary. Acknowledged, Marshall responded. Moving to Junction 7 Delta. The next 90 seconds were among the most tense of Winter's career. She monitored multiple security systems simultaneously, tracking the team's progress while watching for any indication that Russian countermeasures had detected their presence. Secondary package deployed, Marshall finally reported. Initiating immediate extraction. Security systems show early-stage alert protocols activating. Quote, understood, Winters responded, already analyzing optimal extraction routes based on the evolving security response. Recommend alternate extraction path through Maintenance Sector 6. Thermal imaging shows minimal personnel presence, and electronic surveillance is degraded in that section due to ongoing system updates. The team adjusted their extraction route according to her recommendation, navigating through the facility with remarkable efficiency despite the elevated security status. Winters continued providing real-time intelligence support, identifying potential threats and opportunities with a precision that belied her limited experience with this type of operation. 47 minutes after initial insertion, only 4 minutes beyond the original timeline, Marshall confirmed that all team members had successfully extracted from the facility and were en route to the submarine rendezvous point. Operation status? Commander Steele asked once the team was safely beyond the facility's security perimeter. Primary objective achieved with complete success, Marshall reported. Secondary objective partially achieved, package deployed, but uncertain if full data acquisition was completed before security protocols activated. Commander Steele turned to Winters. Assessment? Based on data transfer patterns before communication terminated, I estimate approximately 73% of targeted Project Meridian data was successfully acquired, Winters replied. The partial dataset should provide significant intelligence value, particularly regarding fundamental technical parameters. The extraction team returned to the Meridian approximately 2 hours later, their specialized equipment concealing any evidence of their activities. As they were debriefed in the submarine's secure compartment, the full scope of their achievement became apparent. They had successfully compromised cutting-edge Russian research, while leaving behind no indication of external interference. The Russians will discover anomalies in their research data over the coming weeks, Dr. Weaver explained during the debrief. But they'll attribute them to internal calculation errors or technical limitations. The effect will be a minimum 8-month setback in their weapons program, possibly longer if they pursue the false research pathways we've introduced. And Project Meridian? Commander Steele inquired, her focus on the operation's secondary objective. One of the technical specialists who had been analyzing the acquired data looked up from his station. Preliminary assessment confirms Dr. Weaver's suspicions. The Russians aren't just developing advanced propulsion systems. They're working on a comprehensive technology suite designed to neutralize carrier group defensive capabilities. Project Meridian appears to be a prototype system for disrupting electronic warfare measures that protect carrier operations. Winters paused, then added, I want to be part of that mission. Commander Steele studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, a gesture that somehow carried the weight of formal ceremony. Lieutenant Jessica Winters, based on your performance during assessment and operational deployment, I am confirming your candidacy for Penumbra. Effective immediately, you are reassigned from conventional naval intelligence to our operational division, with all rights and responsibilities therein. She reached into a secure compartment and withdrew a small titanium card, similar to the one she carried, a physical token of ultraviolet clearance. This remains in my possession until your formal induction. You'll undergo specialized training over the next 6 months, after which you'll be evaluated for independent operational authority. The moment carried profound significance, a threshold cross that would forever separate Winters from the conventional naval career she had envisioned when she first received her commission. She was entering a shadow world few knew existed, accepting responsibilities that would test not just her skills, but her moral compass in ways she was only beginning to understand. There's something else you should know, Commander Steele added. her tone shifting subtly. Every Penumbra operative answers a fundamental question during their service. What happens when extraordinary authority meets human fallibility? Some discover they can't bear the weight of decisions made outside conventional oversight. Others find purpose in that precise responsibility, in being the final safeguard when all other systems fail. She paused, then continued with rare personal disclosure. 15 years ago, I faced a situation where ultraviolet clearance allowed me to prevent a conflict that would have cost thousands of lives. I made a decision that violated international law, military protocols, and possibly ethical boundaries, a decision I would make again without hesitation because the alternative was objectively worse. That's the reality of Penumbra service, Lieutenant. Not just the power to override admirals, but the burden of justifying that power through impeccable judgment. Winters absorbed this with growing understanding of the path she had chosen. How do you measure success in an organization that officially doesn't exist? When your victories can never be acknowledged, and your methods would be questioned by those who don't understand the full context? By the absence of catastrophe, Steele replied simply. By the conflicts that don't escalate, the threats that never materialize, the stability that persists despite forces working to undermine it. Success in Penumbra isn't measured in medals or promotions. It's measured in the countless lives that continue in peace, never knowing how close they came to chaos. As the USS Meridian began its journey back to friendlier waters, Lieutenant Jessica Winters stood in the observation compartment, watching the endless darkness of the deep ocean surrounding them. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Operating in depths others couldn't reach, moving with purpose through an environment hostile to human presence, carrying out missions vital to security yet invisible to those they protected. She had entered a world where authority existed in direct proportion to responsibility, where moral clarity was as essential as tactical precision, where success meant no one would ever know what you had accomplished. It wasn't the naval career she had imagined. It was something far more demanding and potentially more meaningful. The Admiral had questioned her orders, then dropped his coffee in shock at her authority level. But the real revelation wasn't about power or clearance designations. It was about purpose, about finding her place in the shadow between diplomacy and war, where the right person making the right decision at the right moment could alter the course of history without leaving a single footprint in its recorded pages. For Lieutenant Jessica Winters, former Naval Intelligence officer and newly confirmed Penumbra operative, that purpose was worth any price demanded of her, including the weight of decisions that would test not just her judgment, but her very soul. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.